Hey, soccer fans. This is Nick Pateris once again for the Sons of a Pitch, an American soccer podcast, joined via the technological marvel that is Skype by my fellow friend and co-host, Mike Guglielmi. Mike, are you surviving quarantine? How you doing? You got your
Barely, man. It's been
post-apocalypse
rough.
haircut going on, dude. You don't have your hat on.
Hey, you know what? I just got a haircut today from the kids. The wife had to touch it up, and I'm like, to hell with the hat. Let's just roll through it. But yeah, it's quarantine is getting rough, man. I'm kind of sick of it. I'm ready to move on and get on with life and get on with sports. But that's just me. So how you doing through quarantine?
Hanging in there, man. I'm still going to the office 2.5 days a week, so I at least get to see the highway. That's like
There you go.
as much as I get of the outdoors nowadays. But anyway, we're here to talk soccer, not talk about survival of the coronavirus pandemic. And for all of you listeners, both on the podcast and on YouTube, if you want to join our conversation, follow us along on social media, either on Twitter at SOP Soccer, on Facebook at Sons of a Pitch Soccer, or especially on YouTube, where Mike is learning all sorts of cool new graphic design type things and really spicing things up. And maybe one day he'll figure out how to actually fix the lighting on my end of things. So some days I look like an Oompa Loompa. I think today I look more like a Smurf. Eventually I'll get the lighting down. So anyway,
See, the
Mike was.
problem here, Nick, is that we're under quarantine, so I can't come to your house and fix it for you.
Right. This isn't my skin tone because of the quarantine. I'm not ill with any sort of virus. It's just the lighting that I'm working with here. But anyway, yeah, listeners and viewers, please reach out to us. Let us know what you think of the show. Let us know if there's anything you want to hear. Additionally, we want to thank our sponsors, Donovan Food Brokerage and Nice Premium Iceland Pure Spring Water, for supporting us. And if anyone out there wants to promote their business or promote themselves or their shows, we do have sponsorships available both on the podcast and on our YouTube channel. And if you want to, what we've been doing lately is a lot of interviews to continue these conversations while we're waiting for league play to resume. So if you haven't already, go back and listen to our interview with the Doopy Brothers talking Philadelphia Union, our interview with Jason Klein talking Forward Madison FC, the Chicago Fire's newest USL affiliate. We also talked to Sacktown, the Sacramento FC podcast, as well as the Fairweather Pod, a San Diego loyal, San Diego themed podcast as well. So go back and check those out. Follow them on social media because it's definitely helping us grow. We crack the top 100 of soccer podcasts in America per Chartables metrics. So we are growing. We are expanding. We just need everyone's continued support. And with that, let's get to the soccer talk of things. Some headlines from around the league. Mike, what have you seen? What's being reported? What do you want to talk about?
Well, the one thing that was interesting is that MLS teams can resume training, but it's only individual workouts. So what exactly does that mean? Does that mean that everybody can come to the training workout spot, but they have to stay 6 feet apart? Does that mean only certain players can come at certain times? How all does that work? I think that I didn't get all of the information out of that because I'm trying to think, hey, all right, we're going to resume training. We're going to be playing on a field 11v11 and doing drills, right? So can resume training and possible games starting June 8th. So I still don't think that's going to happen. I think they'll end up pushing it back a little bit further because that's about 34 days away from recording time. But we'll see. I think it'll be close to that time, but I think maybe get pushed back a week or two from that. But overall, I mean, it's a step in the right direction, right? So now we're at least getting players back into the facilities. But Nick, why don't you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So it's individual workouts at the team training fields. They're not allowed to use like the facilities proper. Like they can't get into the locker room. They can't get into any of the weight rooms, the indoor training centers. No access to doctors, medical personnel, stuff like that. At least indoor. They can use the outdoor training fields, and the teams have to put together plans that are approved by the team medical staff in the MLS. So part of those plans include having doctors available on site, first response plans if someone is exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms, social distancing plans, staggering schedules where only a certain number of players are on the pitch at a certain number of times. So all this stuff has to get put into a plan, approved by the organization's medical staff, approved by the MLS. I guess if you want a comparison, it's kind of like OTAs, like optional training activities in the NFL, where like the team can't necessarily organize them. They can put the plan together, and then it's up to the individual athletes to kind of show up, do their training at the outdoor fields, and then eventually, hopefully, this moves into more team drills and then into, full organization, staffers and everyone. And then we get to some real games. I've been hearing from different people, social media, some of the guys we've been interviewing and interacting with. It's like, it's going to take, 3 to 4 weeks of full team practices before you're ready to get back into gameplay. We don't want to rush players back just for the sake of having games and have them risk injury because they're not match fit. So I think, again, it's a step in the right direction, but you're right, Mike. We're not going to see any sort of games for at least a month, if that. Maybe some exhibition scrimmages.
All right. So does that mean that what's the spotlight on then? If you're talking about injuries and full fitness, are we talking about is that bigger concern more about full fitness of these players as far as getting, ACL injuries and, getting injured because of soccer? Or are we more concerned about coronavirus and, two guys coming in close contact with each other during a tackle? What's the concern level? Where does this go from here?
I'd have to speculate and say it's both, but I mean, as far as the training is concerned, the major concern is the spread of the coronavirus. As far as the game situations go, you got to worry about the player's fitness as well as the spread of the coronavirus between players, between staff, between people working the games, fans, concessions, everyone, people hanging out in the parking lots. Like when you're looking towards playing full games, your bigger concern is the spread of the virus. But as far as but the players, maybe it's also the fitness. When you're looking at training, then you're definitely just trying to help the spread of the virus and give these players at least a little bit of fitness. What I think is great is that they're probably looking at some of the newer findings that have been coming out from the medical community and saying that, if you're outside and you've got some distance between you and the next person, you're fine. It's more likely to spread when you're confined indoors than it is if people are outside walking around a little bit. This is obviously, unless you're like standing next to someone or like jogging with them and your perspiration and your breathing and everything is close in close contact. So right. It's nice that they're opening up some of the outdoor stuff. So that's my take on it. I remain hopeful we get to see a few games and maybe a modified playoff schedule.
Yeah, I'm hoping we get back to normal fairly soon, even if normal means playing behind closed doors, just to get some games going because I'm dying. I need some sports in my life, especially MLS. I'm not missing any of the other stuff, baseball or, hockey got their season ended. I never thought I'd say that being Canadian. I love hockey and all, but it's MLS. I'm ready to get MLS back and enjoy some games. The EMLS stuff is not doing it for me. And we'll get into that a little bit further later on in the show.
Well, you can still train with the MLS, Mike, which I found this was neat that MLS, I forget what their little subdivision of it is. It's like the MLS Digital Works or whatever, put out a series of digital workouts and training videos on MLSsoccer.com. And you can actually have fitness routines and ball handling skills and other sort of workouts from people within the MLS. I haven't looked into it too much yet, obviously, because I'm already in peak physical podcasting condition. I don't need to do any of these MLS trainings myself. But it looks to be a mix of like people from MLS clubs and organizations, maybe a few players jumping in too. So some for fans, if you want to kind of interact and stay a little fit, go for that.
What about us fat folk over here that, we don't do that kind of stuff?
Okay, well, you're more interested in the MLS rumors. So how do you feel about... Yeah, huh? What was that?
I am.
Yeah, the rumors.
Interested.
So we've got a couple of big rumors that I read this week. One not so well known and one pretty well known. The pretty well known, James Rodriguez of Real Madrid has been rumored to come to Inter Miami. he's ever since that big World Cup a couple cycles ago with Colombia, he's been kind of underperforming at the club level. I think he's bounced around to a few different big leagues in Europe, never really becoming that world star that a lot of people projected him to be. And now he's not really doing much with Real Madrid. Still young enough where he can play in a Big Five European league, but at the same time, he could really shine in a league like the MLS, especially for a club like Miami. And then the other kind of rumor I just started hearing is Juan Mata, the the current Manchester United player, 32 years old, World Cup champion, guy's done it all over Europe. Possible that he could come to the MLS. Now, I don't know if that is anything based on like an agent or a report or leaking something, or if it's just speculation about who's the next soon-to-be retired European coming over here. I don't know if we're ever gonna break that that kind of stigma. But what's funny, the article I read, and I think it was on MLS's website, said like, oh, here's some possible landing spots for Juan Mata: Cincinnati, Vancouver, Nashville. I'm like, the World Cup champion isn't going to come over here to go play in Cincinnati. I don't think. So that one might just be more speculation than actual rumor or actual possibility. What are your thoughts on these guys coming to MLS?
It is what it is. I could see it happening. For James Rodriguez, just kind of what you talked about. He's kind of underperformed on the club level since that World Cup, I think 2 cycles ago. But yeah, I mean, it just seems like it's just a bunch of talk. Until Miami, I want to see the proof in the pudding. So James Rodriguez could come to MLS. I kind of get that story, right? Because he has been struggling over in Europe. But Juan Mata, I don't know. That doesn't seem very realistic, especially with the clubs that you're talking about, your smaller market clubs. Maybe to a New York or an LA or Toronto kind of deal. But even then, the guy's still kind of in his prime with Manchester United. I don't see that happening. So I know that we're trying to fill some type of air here with all this coronavirus break and everything like that, and breaking up some rumors to get guys moving and put something down on paper. But I don't see it happening really for any of these guys, especially with Miami. Show me that it's going to get done. Like, get it done. All right, Rodolfo Pizarro. That's one thing. He was rumored to go to the Fire forever, and then all of a sudden he's in a Miami jersey. I want to see that big name signing, and I before I can start believing all the hype and all their huge rumors about Messi and Ronaldo and Neymar and all this BS. Even James Rodriguez, right? Show me that you can sign somebody of big international stature, and then not just show up in the intro video when they're talking about their club like Beckham did with Neymar and all these other guys. Then I'll start to believe it a little bit. But as of right now, I think it's just all a bunch of talk. I don't see anybody moving anywhere, especially right now with all the COVID-19 hiatuses all throughout the world. So those are my takes on those rumors. Yeah, it's good to see some rumors out there to at least kind of get you thinking a little bit, but I don't see any of this actually happening.
Well put, Mike. Well put. We're going to get to a few more headlines on the second half of the show, but I wanted to take a few minutes real quick and talk about something on the national soccer scene here. If you listeners haven't heard by now, I don't know what you've been looking for or reading, but the United States women's national team's lawsuit was in large part dismissed by the federal circuit judge in the Central District of California. So the lawyer in me was just giddy reading this legal opinion. Like, I loved it from a legal standpoint, and I loved it from like the judge's personal style as well. So I'll give you a few takes on it. We'll get into the result, and then Mike, let's kind of see how is this going to impact like the American soccer landscape, both from USSF all the way down to maybe some of the youth leagues and whatnot. But the women's lawsuit was dismissed. They filed 2 claims, one for equal pay and one for equal rights. Now, the equal pay claims were dismissed. The equal rights claims, some of them can go forward. Those ones will include like equal access to medical staff and facilities, training fields, and trainers, accommodations like charter flights, travel, hotel accommodations, as well as field surfaces and playing surfaces. Those claims can all go forward. Those are being allowed. They're going to go to trial on those. But as far as like the equal pay, which is really the big one, at least from a public perspective. That one got dismissed, and the main reason the judge dismissed these was because he looked at the collective bargaining agreements that the men had and the women had, and they bargained for completely different things. And there's nothing to show that there was any discrepancy or any sort of equal pay discrimination based in those collective bargaining agreements. The women bargained for this, the men bargained for that. And that's how the judge looked at it. One of the things he actually wrote in his opinion was the women can't now argue that they outperformed their contract and therefore are discriminated against, or they can't go back and say, well, had we taken what the men had, we would have made more money. You can't retroactively kind of apply that. So that was kind of the judge's thinking. What was interesting to note is you look at, and we've talked about this in past episodes, so I'll touch on it briefly. A lawyer saying the word briefly and actually meaning it. Come on. Anyway, so the men have a pay for play. They have to actually make the team. They have to be selected. They have to play in the games. They get bonuses. If a man does not make the 23-man USMNT roster, he doesn't get any part of that money. The women, rather than be rewarded, rather than put a structure in place like the men, wanted guarantees. So the women have guaranteed contracts. I think there's at least 11 national team players who have guaranteed contracts, regardless if they're fit or regardless if they make the team. There's guaranteed money that's paid to the women's team. They have health insurance. They have dental, I think, through the U.S. Soccer Federation. All these things the men do not have because the men, and I would say the men aren't pushing for this because they can make more money in their respective leagues and the ones that are actually making the national team.
Right.
So the women bargained for different things, and the judge found that was very much controlling in this case. What else I found really interesting is that, at least per the economic expert witnesses that were called, they showed that the women made more money per game than the men in the last World Cup cycle, or in the last 5 years, or throughout the last collective bargaining, or whatever it was. And they also made more in total compensation as well. So the women picked the perfect time to file their lawsuit from a public perspective, but they picked the worst time to do it from an economic perspective. The flip side to that is, well, the men's pot is bigger than the women's pot. That's part of the equation. Also, bonuses were not taken into account because the judge found that those were exactly what they are. They're bonuses. They're not wages. They're not salaries. They're not part of this compensation. So even though the men would make a lot more with the bonuses, it wasn't taken into account. So the women played more games. They won more tournaments. They made more money. So the judge said, no, during this time frame for which you are alleging in your suit you were discriminated against, you actually made more money. And just as the women can't go and say, well, we would have made more if we would have had the men, as it turns out, the men, had they been paid under the women's structure, would be making more money. So the judge is like, well, the men aren't filing a lawsuit. So it's a lot of back and forth, but really it comes down to what was bargained for. For me, though, the bottom line is that this was a lose-lose for the U.S. Soccer Federation. They're either going to win their lawsuit and then lose in the court of public opinion, or they're going to lose their lawsuit and then be forced to pay $67 million that the women calculated, and then possibly bankrupt U.S. soccer. So they are going to be bargaining. They are going to be trying to improve the relationship between the women's national team and U.S. soccer, as well as fix the public image of it. But it was kind of a lose-lose for U.S. soccer. The final thing I want to say, Mike, before we get your opinion on this, and definitely have been keeping this brief, haven't I? I read a couple things. I didn't see hard numbers, but I read a couple things that said U.S. soccer pays their athletes a lot more as far as percentages of their annual budget and revenues than any other American sports federation. I think part of that is just trying to grow and support these soccer players, and part of that too is we're not making NBA money here. These soccer players aren't making money like NBA basketball players are. So USA basketball doesn't have to worry about paying those guys. They're well taken care of. They can put money into facilities and travel and everything else. Whereas U.S. soccer needs to pay their athletes so much more and maybe they don't have as much left um, for those travel, for those accommodations. The other thing you got to remember too, U.S. Soccer is doing all the development in this country to feed U.S. soccer growth and players and develop young athletes. You look at the NBA, they've got AAU developing kids, every high school team, in the country too. You look at the NFL, you've got colleges, you've got Pee Wee football. Major League Baseball has 4 levels, three minor league systems, Major League Baseball, independent leagues. Soccer isn't there yet. We don't have the academies. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have a lot of these programs like other sports do. So U.S. Soccer has to continue to fund and put a lot of money into that, and yet does a pretty good job of balancing that with paying players playing their national team call-ups. So that's the long and the short of it from my perspective here, Mike. And maybe it was a little more legalese than you would have enjoyed, but I'm sure the accountant in you loves hearing a little bit more about the numbers.
Yeah, as far as it all goes, I mean, when you're talking about that last point there with the, USA basketball and USA baseball and all these other things, and the money is just completely different, and that's true. But you also have to look at the standpoint of USA soccer. These guys are playing friendlies 4 to 8 times a year rather than these other sports where they're not playing friendlies. When was the last time you saw a USA baseball friendly, right? Or a USA basketball game other than the Olympics? You don't see it, right? There's the FIBA World Cup, and then there's the Olympics in basketball, and that's it. So they're not playing as often. So I kind of get that standpoint of it. Overall, it is a lose-lose, right? You stated it perfectly, Nick. When you're talking about you win in the court system, but you lose in public opinion, right? You look all over Twitter. It's just constant ripping on the USSF about this situation. Equal pay, equal pay, equal pay, right? Well, a judge, based on the law and the merits of everything, stated that the equal pay situation is what it is. This is something that needs to be worked out outside of the courtroom, because you're not talking about a legal situation. You're not talking about, a court of public opinion. It's right in the middle, right? Let's figure this out together. When is the next CBA up? When are we going to be discussing that going forward? Because that's the most important thing here. The women have talked about, okay, they're going to appeal. Of course they're going to appeal, right? They got it ripped out of their hands. The USSF completely threw a huge blunder out there, the way they did with the last law firm, and then they left and then came back, and all that in the court of public opinion. So of course they're going to appeal, but when is the CBA actually going to get negotiated again? Now it's time to start talking. Let's get some business down there. Okay, we as the women want more money. Okay, well then we're going to take some certain things off of this side, and vice versa, right? Both teams are going to negotiate. The U.S. Soccer Federation and the U.S. Women's Players Association are going to negotiate to come up with an agreement. And that's the way these sports contracts work. You see it in MLB, you see it in MLS, you see it in NFL, you see it in all these other sports. It's going to happen. You're going to have some things you're going to have to negotiate on and compromise on, and you're going to lose a little bit on this end, but you're going to gain a little bit on the other end. And I think that's what the most important factor is for this next round is when are the women going to be happy with what they're getting, and the USSF is going to have to give up on certain things, and let's just get back together here. Like, why is there such a disconnect between USSF and US women's soccer? Is it just is it strictly the promotion of the social aspect of life? I mean, are we trying to talk about, feminism? Is this what this is about? Is it about soccer? Is it about, actual dollar for dollar money? Is this about, what exactly is this about? Let's go forward in this agreement, and let's make some compromises here. USSF, U.S. Women's National Team, let's get together and figure out the best plan for both parties going forward. That's the only thing I can think of.
Absolutely, Mike. And you've said it best in other episodes, and we've talked about this too. Like, the bottom line is get together, get the deal hammered out. No one is going to be 100% happy, but one courtroom I practiced in, the judge had a sign above his bench. And while I questioned the ethics of it, I laughed at the language. It actually said, a bad settlement is better than a good trial, because both sides are getting something, even though both sides are giving up something. Whereas
Right.
if you go to trial and there's a clear winner and a clear loser, well, then you're never going to bridge that divide. You need to have, like you put, Mike, in prior episodes, you need to have the employer and the employees working together for the benefit of everybody. And I think that it's going to have ramifications throughout the world of American soccer, because now you've got a whole generation of young women who are eyeing a higher level of soccer, either at the collegiate level, NWISL, and at some point at the USWNT. And to see, why would I want to go play for US soccer? Why would I want to stay in the NWISL? I could go overseas. I could play in college and probably get a scholarship. Why would I want to waste my time and effort for this organization? You don't want to have that sort of feeling when you're trying to develop it. Now, the flip side of that argument is, well, we're the greatest women's soccer nation in the world, so obviously you want to play for us. So you're going to have to balance that out. The last couple of things that I want to say is, a lot of people I've seen are taking shots at the judge in this case. And they're saying that this guy's terrible. He's always overturned on appeal. Like, his labor and employment record is horrible. I've read some of that criticism, and I've read some of the counterpoints. If you look at the judge's track record, overall, it's not bad. It's pretty average. I think just less than half of his cases end up getting overturned on appeal. And I did see some California lawyer tweeting out that 100% of his labor and employment cases have been overturned. And someone replied, yeah, all two of them. And this isn't a labor and employment case. This is an equal pay and equal rights case. So there's a lot of kind of tweaking kind of the perception of it. But as an attorney and as someone who's done trial work, judges don't want to be overturned. They hate being brought up on appeal, and they hate it even more when they're overturned. So they will do everything they can to make sure that their rulings are within the law, because it's just a black mark on them every time they lose, or anytime one of their cases gets overturned at appeal. So don't rip the judge on this one. And you can rip U.S. soccer all you want to, because of what they wrote in their briefs and how they handled the PR side of this. But when it came down to it, this federal judge said the CBA's control, and that's what we're making our ruling on. So with that, we're going to wrap up the first half of the show. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll hit a few more headlines, and we're actually going to do our pro referee offside challenge. Pro referees put out a training video on YouTube. Mike and I are going to watch it. Hopefully we can get the side-by-side screens going on here, and then we'll see how we fare on some of these offside calls and test our offside knowledge. So stay tuned.
All right, back from our halftime break. Thank you all, mostly to our sponsors, for letting us do what we do, Donovan Food Brokerage and Nice Premium Iceland Pure Spring Water, and as well to our listeners. Thank you for listening to us blabber about nothing at all during this coronavirus break. Very much appreciated, as well as our viewers on YouTube. So make sure to subscribe on YouTube to be part of our 1,000 YouTube viewers subscriber challenge, which we're going to have to edit out some way, somehow. But overall, we want to talk a little bit more headlines here before we get into our possible pro referee challenge and see who's the better referee here between Nick and I. But the first thing that I want to talk about, of course, is my hometown, my beloved Toronto FC. They made a contract announcement with Marky Delgado. They renewed Marky Delgado's contract, a long-term contract for how long? I don't know. What the terms are? I don't know. The only thing that we do know is that it's a long-term contract extension. So overall, Marky Delgado, there was some talk earlier on in the season. Marky kind of went public with it on TSN, the ESPN in the United States, up there in Canada, and kind of went public there and said, hey, like, this is it. This is my final year, and if I got to move on, I got to move on. I love Toronto, whatever, which has kind of seemed to be the popular way of doing things recently with some of their better players. So he went down that road and got rewarded with the contract extension. Marky Delgado, some people are thinking, like, who? Right? Especially some of us are like, well, the USMNT, he's not really in that discussion.
Yeah, I think he's the guy that missed the sitter in Champions League. That's how I remember Marky Delgado.
Yep, he
But that's
sure
just because
is.
I like bringing up bad memories for you. That's all. That's all.
And maybe because it was like the second episode we ever did together, Nick.
That's
That
true.
too. But overall, the guy has got some serious talent. He should be in the U.S. men's national team picture. Um, he's really, really underrated, especially from a TFC standpoint. I think he gets overshadowed by the midfield when you've got, Michael Bradley in midfield. You've had Victor Vasquez. You've got Alejandro Pozuelo. You have all these big name guys in that TFC midfield. Not to mention then when you kind of get under that, you've got a guy like Jonathan Osorio, who's the hometown kid right there from Brampton, right? So he's kind of getting the next level of recognition. But then Markey has just been he's been great. Other than that sitter that he missed in Champions League, and he's had some rough patches here and there over the last couple seasons, but he's a really, really strong player, and I think that it's well deserved for him, just like it is for Osorio. Osorio had a great year last year, and he's been doing well so far this year in the few games that he's had this season. And Marky Delgado, same thing. So it's a good move from TFC's perspective. Lock down these hard, these really big time midfield players that they've got, and move forward. So Nick, what are your thoughts on Marky Delgado?
Yeah, so I mean, looking at him, a few numbers that stick out is he's only 24 years old, so he's coming into the prime of his career right now. So a long-term contract is perfect for both him and for the club. I mean, hopefully he outperforms the contract, but yet it still gives him the security where if something were to happen, if he picks up an injury or whatever the case may be, hits a slump, he's still going to be around for a while. So I think it was the perfect move. Now, long-term extension, 4 years, 5 years. I mean, in MLS terms, it was a long-term extension, plus or minus four, right? Like
Right.
just with the way salary cap is structured, the way DPs come and go, stuff like that. Who knows what a long-term contract is? And for those listeners and viewers who don't know, because since the MLS is a single entity and the individual clubs are actually franchises, not separate business entities, the MLS controls the contract, so they don't have to release the terms of it if they don't want to. So that's why Mike is saying he doesn't know, not because he's not a diehard Red fan over there and not doing his homework, but the league hasn't released the info. I'm sure we'll get it in another couple of years.
Yep.
The other thing is, you said we're going to see him in the U.S. national team picture. He's had a handful of appearances with the U17, 18, and U20 teams, and since 2018, he's actually had 6 senior team call-ups, if Wikipedia can be trusted. So he's getting some looks. He's well known within the MLS community, obviously. So maybe now's the time, now that he's hitting his prime. I think the only problem is there's so much talk around the next wave of players, like the guys like Tim Weah and that group that are coming up, that maybe Delgado just kind of gets lost in all of that when he's going to be one of those consistent club performers, but maybe never get that moment to shine on the national team. It'll be great to see how he develops in TFC, and hopefully he can really step his game up as we see Altidore and Bradley kind of slowly transition away from the club.
Right. I think that could come into play with that kind of age group, right? Say maybe 23 to about 27. Right now, you're kind of in that, you're in your prime right now, but the next World Cup isn't for a couple of years. And USMNT is kind of focused on the new guys that are coming in are going to be those real younger players. You're 17, 18, 19, maybe 20 max kind of youth type of movement that the USMNT has gone through. So maybe that's kind of affected him as well from that standpoint. But overall, he's been
Right.
a great midfielder and really should be in that picture if you want my opinion. But of course, I'm a little biased.
Here, let's give you your opinion then here, Mike, because part of the reason he's getting overlooked is from other, like you said, other guys in that age group. And the first name that came to mind was Christian Roldan of Seattle. Who would you take if you're Greg Berhalter? And you only could pick one, Roldan or Delgado?
I'd take Delgado because I've seen more of them, and that's probably only because it's the fact that I watch more TFC games than I do Sounders games. But overall, seeing the way the guy works, his work rate is unbelievable, just like Roldan, if not better. And he does it in a quieter fashion, and I think that's the difference, right? Roldan kind of makes more headlines. He plays in a U.S. market, which also affects things. So, personally, I would take Marky Delgado. I mean, I've seen what the guy can do on the training pitch during games. I know what he's capable of, just like I've seen from Roldan on the national team level in the Odd Sounders game. But I think that if I had a choice, it would be Delgado. But I'm not the coach.
Right. I go with you too, not only for the reasons you stated, but we've seen Roldan. We know what he's going to do with the national team. And I don't think he is going to excel with the national team. So let's give Delgado the chance to kind of prove himself and see how well he can fit in with the rest of that squad. So that's why I would take Delgado.
Okay. Nice. Now, another headline that kind of caught my attention today was another player talking smack about Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who recently went over to AC Milan in Serie A, and before that season got cut short, like every other season. This one was really interesting to me. So, an LA Galaxy player talking smack about Ibrahimovic, but the problem is the guy never played with Ibra with the Galaxy. So
Who is this
this
now?
like a deflection of, so the guy is Emiliano Insua, the new signing that the Galaxy brought in over the offseason. And he comes out and he's like, yeah, nobody likes Zlatan. Everybody's been telling me how horrible he is and how horrible of a teammate he was. A great player, but not a good teammate. And so now he's talking smack. So what I find interesting is well, one, is this just a press opportunity for this guy to try and like make a name for himself in MLS since he came over and then the season got suspended with this coronavirus break and whatnot. Is this, was it that ugly inside the LA Galaxy locker room last season? I mean, from the reports that we're hearing, it was. And judging by the play on the field as well, I mean, you had this guy who's scoring goals left and right, and the team performed better without him on the field. Maybe, maybe there is some truth to these rumors, but I found it very interesting that a player who didn't even play on the team is now coming out and being like, yeah, he was a scumbag.
Wow, that's interesting. Now I don't know anything about Inswana, and I haven't read his comments, but the guy has a decent soccer pedigree here. Like he's
Yeah.
played with Boca Juniors, Liverpool, Sporting Portugal, Atletico Madrid, Stuttgart, and now with the Galaxy, he's got a handful of Argentine senior appearances. Like the guy's a solid footballer, a good left back, and is probably going to do a lot for the Galaxy. But honestly, it sounds like he's just kind of saying what we already knew, that nobody really liked being in the locker room with Zlatan, and even as viewers, when we watched the game, the Galaxy only had one identity, was get the ball to Zlatan. And then when he was
Mhm.
not playing in the games, they actually had to come up with a game plan, play as a team, explore different options, run tactics, things like that. And I don't know, I guess now that sounds more like what Zlatan demanded when he was on the field than what the coaching staff came up with. I don't think the coaching staff said, "Okay, guys, going into this next game, just give the ball to Zlatan." A la, what was it, Will Ferrell and Kicking and Screaming? Like, give the ball to the Italian kids. Like, give the ball to Zlatan. Like, I don't think that's what the coaches were doing, but I think that's how Zlatan was demanding it. And it seems that these comments kind of give more credit to that.
Yeah, absolutely. A shame because Latan, MLS was trying to just milk that marketing perspective for everything they could. And, I mean, I guess it worked out, right? I mean, MLS is showing the classic game
Sure.
of Toronto FC against LA Galaxy tonight with Ibra's 500th goal in a losing cause. I don't know. It was all marketing and it was ugly, but you know what? It is what it is. MLS has to do what it's got to do to continue to grow the league. So one
Right.
last headline is another thing that the league is trying to do to continue the growth of the league is this EMLS tournament challenge that's been on FS1 and Fox Deportes, right? So they've got this tournament going on with where you've got the MLS player from one of the teams playing against another player from one of the teams in FIFA 20, and that's the first leg of the competition. And then the second leg is the gamers themselves, so like their pro whatever, the superstar gamers that they do this for a living, like they play video games and they get paid for it, kind of thing, which is like really
Don't tell my
weird.
parents, because I was told that was not a viable career
You know,
option
me
when I was
too,
younger.
man. And I think that's our generation, right? So us in the mid 30s, they're all like, yeah, you'll never be able to play video games for a career. And then the 25-year-olds were like, yeah, right. So,
Yep.
you know. So yeah, so these guys are playing in their FS1 tournament, and the whole thing's being, digitally broadcast, and they've got Stu Holden out there with a couple other faces that I had never seen before, plus a Rachel Bonetta, who was like TFC's YouTube person, probably 3-4 seasons ago. Kind of made her name. She started with TFC and has so moved on to bigger and better things with Fox and whatnot. But it's interesting. This whole thing, they play these 4-minute halves, and the first episode, it really grabbed my attention. Right, I'm so desperate for sports in an EMLS platform. I'm like, anything, just give me something to watch, and it was kind of interesting. And then after I watched, the rest of that episode, and then the next episode the next week, I'm like, all this comes down to is who has the better MLS player, because the two gamers, the pro gamer guys, it's a 4-minute half match, so it's a fairly even game, right? So it just depends on the other leg on how these MLS players go. And if you got a good MLS player like Sporting Kansas City does with Juan Kuzain, who's like 18 years old, and a good pro gamer, they're going to dominate. So the first 3 weeks are in the books now. We've got one more week to watch. Toronto FC comes into play with an aforementioned Marky Delgado as TFC's representative. I think that's the only reason I'm going to watch is because TFC's involved in it. If they get knocked out, I can't see myself going any further than that. But this EMLS tournament stuff, New England Revolution is trying to simulate every single game that they play at the exact same time they play. So, for example, New England was at Toronto on last Wednesday, and they put up a live stream on YouTube of the game of New England at Toronto. And turned out to be a 4-3 victory for Toronto FC because, yes, I got through it after 3 nights of falling asleep to it. But look,
Jeez.
278 views for the team, right? The team putting out this game and only 278 people are watching it. It's showing me something that people don't really give a shit about MLS esports or simulated games.
Right. And what's funny is Robert Kraft and the Revolution franchise, or not the Revolution franchise, but like Robert Kraft and his whole like sports ownership group or whatever, like they were relatively early to the e-sports competitions. Like they were one of the first, I think, to have a professional esports player to sponsor someone both in MLS and in Madden as well, I think. So
Yeah.
they've been doing it for a while, but it doesn't sound like they've learned much, or maybe the market is just so specialized, niche, whatever you want to call it, that FIFA tournaments and MLS aren't ever gonna be the big draw that you want them to be.
Yeah, I mean, I was just shocked. I mean, I'd love to see what the actual TV numbers look like from Fox Sports 1 and Fox Deportes, but when you look at that New England, 270, I found it as a TFC fan, right?
Yeah.
That was the whole way I found it and then watched it. So you've got to think maybe 5 to 10% of their views came from the opposing team. So you're talking like 250 views from their team, their people that watch that. I mean, it's
it's probably the gamers, like his parents, his cousins, his girlfriend, and like that's who's watching that. That's like a half of the 250 people.
Right. I mean, our viewership on YouTube has just gone way down, and I'm thinking that's because it's just nobody's looking for the sports. The sports content because of where we're at right now. There's no games going on. It's strictly, talking about something to talk about. And, our viewership has dropped, and I was surprised to see how low someone like an actual team like New England Revolution, who put as much time as they did into this, to only have 270 views. So just an interesting thing. But this whole the EMLS thing, the whole FIFA sports, I really wish it was cool. I really do. I just can't get into it. I need real sports, Nick. Give me real sports. Somebody, please.
Well, here, let's give you the next closest thing, and let's do our pro referee offside challenge here.
Amen. Let's do it.
Okay, everyone, we are going to get into the pro assistant referee offside test. So it's from the perspective of the sideline ref. They're going to send us 25 clips here. And let's see if we can call correctly the offsides exercises here. This is for every quarterback armchair referee here. We're gonna take the challenge and see if we can cut it. So you ready for this, Mike?
Let's do it, man.
All right, I'm actually a little nervous.
Yeah, me too.
We haven't watched this video before.
No.
That's close. Was he offside?
Yeah, he was offside.
I think offside on that one. Clip number 2.
Offside again.
Offside. All right, so we're 2 offside. I should be writing this down, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
I don't have a notepad in front of me.
Offside again.
Yeah, I think the first 3 they're all offside.
Yeah,
I'm with you on
sure.
this, Mike. But it shows you just how quick it can be and like how you got to keep
And this
your
is if
eye
you
on.
have great positioning too. Now that one completely froze up on my end, so I didn't even get to see it.
I'd say maybe he was even, and if he's even, it's got to go with
That one was close
the
too.
attacker. Yeah, and you saw the defender raise his hand to try and distract the
Try
ref
and
on
sell
that
it.
too.
Yeah.
All right, that's offside. I'd say the vast majority of these have been offside. Maybe clips 4 and 5 go to the attacker just on a tie. Clip 7,
offside.
I'd say he's offside on that one too. Like you get those stutter steps, or these guys try to make these vertical runs.
Right.
Clip 8.
That was like dead even, man.
Yeah. Now, viewers, we didn't look at this before. We haven't brushed up on any of the rules or anything like that. We're just we're doing it like anyone else would. So yeah, most of these are offside.
Yep.
Oh, that was close because I feel like
close.
the trailing defender kept the player onside on that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go onside with that last one. Onside for sure. Onside.
Onside for 12?
100% for number 12. Yep.
Or 11. 11 that was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the video kind of messed it up there. Okay, this
clip 7.
Clip 7. Where's this video going? Who's doing the editing
clip
here?
13.
This is ridiculous.
Come on, pro. Your editing's as bad as your refereeing.
Oh, Mike, not pulling any punches here. So, okay, clip 14 now. That looked offside, but I think what's making it difficult is the defender rubbing the player, the offensive player there, giving a little bump. Again, looked offside. I'd say most of these are offside, Mike, wouldn't you? Maybe 4 of them?
Yeah, there's been a few that have been on, but other than that, it's mostly offside.
Yeah. And this is quick succession. This just tells you what a referee goes through on a game-to-game basis, like how quickly they have to make a call. And
yeah, but they're not doing these just back to back to back to back to back like that. So it's a load of shit. But this especially with the background, the way it's set up, with all the different lines and whatnot, there's different things. That was clearly offside.
Well, no, that 19 might not have been, because it looked like the offside player ran away from the play, and the player who received the ball, just like in clip,
dead even.
The player who received the ball was onside. So it comes down to whether they interfered with the play, even though they didn't make a play on the ball. Just like that one, the guy ran off the pitch, and the player who was onside continued to make the run. So those are some of those boom boom kind of decisions you got to make. And hopefully this gets easier with better implementation of VAR. It was hard saying that with a straight face.
The last time I saw a play in a game where you had 3 defenders and 3 offensive players in the same clip, dead even like that.
I'd like to see some takes on set pieces. Now that one might be on. I think that would have been onside before VAR, that last clip. But after VAR, they would have said, well, the offensive player's shoulder was offside, so so he's offside now. Let's see how well we did here. And I didn't really keep running tally, but I think we got a good gist of it.
Yep. Interesting. Onside.
Dragging the back leg.
The first few were offside.
Wow,
So
look at that.
who's that looks to me? I thought that was the referee that they're claiming is the last defender or the coach. It seems to be. See, that's the coach. That's not a player. I thought the yellow player was the defender and the red player was the offensive player. And they've
Yeah.
got like this coach standing there that they've been drawing the line out of.
Well, no, the yellow player is the defender. You're right there, Mike. But you're seeing where the defender's dragging his back leg, and that's what's keeping these offensive players onside. So clip 5, yeah, I figured that was onside. You saw the defender raise his hand and throw it up, and usually trying to get a call like that doesn't
Right.
help your case at all. But yeah, it's interesting that these dragging of the back legs by these defenders is what's keeping it onside. That's good defensive positioning. You see, he brings his feet up close. He's not spread out. He's not making himself bigger and keeping the player onside. Clip 7, if it is really clip 7.
See, that's
good.
based. I mean, that's off the damn coach back there. That's got nothing to do with the players that are involved in the pitch.
Well, see, there you go, Mike.
So
Clip 9
now
shows you.
this one shows clearly that it's with the players. But these other ones, it seems like the line's coming off the coach. Not that one, obviously.
I don't know why this guy's doing a ballet move in clip 10. We didn't see that at game speed, but I'm glad they paused it so we could see him prancing through the air.
Oh, some more prancing. Look at that.
Yeah. But that's demonstrative of, his arms are out. He's making himself bigger. That's not a good defensive move.
Right.
Okay, clip 12, offside. That seemed fairly straightforward. Onside, yep. At the very least, even with the defender there. Remember, everyone, it's from when the ball is played, not from when the player receives the ball.
Right.
There you go, jumping through the air, offside. But that one, they saw the arm was trailing back, but they didn't find that to be indicative. Clip 15, clearly offside there. So I think we got better as it went on when we started kind of looking at a few of the tight windows here. But there's that back leg drag again.
Yeah, but here's the thing though. When you're watching a game, the back leg drag is not what's looked at. It's the position of the player's body, especially with these VAR overturns. You're looking at the player, and you can see that you've got like a shoulder of the offensive player slightly ahead of the defensive player. It doesn't come down to the feet. It comes down. This is extremely off. Very misleading from pro referees. I wish they would put this. I'm assuming this is a training video for what their actual refs go through.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just an assist, a guide.
I want to see it. Like, okay, you can put this together and run all these different clips with the same exact background with your different yellow and red jerseys and all that kind of stuff. Can we try to get pro referees to get shit right on a regular basis during the games? That's what I want to see. Because this is, you can put these clips together and say, oh, yeah, well, when we stop this exactly here, this is what we see. I want to see real game time clips.
Yeah, and that's really how they should be doing the training, is using examples from games, because we keep talking about this leg drag or the defender's like flailing his arms about and sticking his leg out. That's not how soccer players actually defend. Like they have been coached and trained and are experienced where they're not doing that. They're shuffling their feet. They're keeping their feet small. They're keeping their profile, ahead of the offensive player to keep them offside. Like they know the tricks. They know and especially they know where they're at on the field. So they know when and where they can get away with a lot of that stuff. So that's the other thing. You pointed it out, right, Mike, right at the beginning of the video, that we have excellent positioning. Sorry, let me close this thing out here in case we're getting a little sound feedback or whatever. But yeah, that's it. It's a training video. I guess we were probably average with the armchair referees there. What do you feel pretty good about your offside knowledge after that now?
I do, because that's I prefer more like game situations, and that was rough.
Yeah, and you want to look at some of the other leagues now. Now, the NFL is not, a model of officiating by any means. But the fact of the matter is, when they do their trainings with their referees at the beginning of the season and throughout the season, they're using actual game clips. Like they're taking plays from the previous season and saying, "This is pass interference. This is not pass interference. This is holding. This is not holding." I'm hoping pro referees does the same thing, where they take actual videos and say this was offsides, this is not offsides.
I'm really hoping so, because you need the real thing, in real games to actually go by. You can create all the tests you want, but it's real time experience. I mean, that's especially when you look at anything in life, right? I mean, like high school, right? You can go through all these classes that try to simulate things. It doesn't work. It's on the job training. It's when you go out there, you get your hands dirty, and that's what truly makes a better person, player, referee, burger
Right.
flipper, whatever you are. That's, and that's, I mean, look at this. You can sit in a classroom and play a test back and forth all day long where you're trying to make things look a certain way. Get out there and do it in the real world. And that's what I was really hoping this offside challenge was going to be like actual game time video and not like a practice test from pro referees. But overall, there's always going to be human error involved in refereeing. If you have humans out there making these decisions, it's going to end up that way. Look at Major League Baseball. I think that's the closest thing to like the strike zone being deliberately robot, strictly these different pitch trackers and all that kind of stuff. That's probably the closest thing we're going to get to perfect. And there's just that human element, right? I mean, that's something that makes a difference in baseball. In your second at bat what that umpire behind you is going to do. I played baseball growing up, so you knew his strike zone was high, right? So that these referees are going to go the certain way that they go. And it's sports. There's going to be that human element. Let's just roll with it. And that's the way it is. Let people bitch and complain. That's what makes sports. When the wrong call goes against you or the wrong call goes for you, you can say, oh, yeah, well, that was because of this, or, oh, well, because the referee blew this one. That's a huge element in sports. And
hey, it gives us more content too, so why not have it?
Exactly.
Great. Yeah, and I agree with you. And the whole point of having that human element, but it's backed up by VAR. So whatever your feelings are on VAR, there is, at least on paper, a check and balance with the side official. And they've been coached, they've been trained. If they think it's close, let the play continue, because then we can take a look at it. So I think they've done a good job of implementing that. And you're right, though, Mike. If it goes against you, you hate it, and if it goes in favor of your team, you're gonna love it. So I think that's how it comes down to, regardless of sport or call.
Yep, absolutely.
So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thanks once again for listening to Mike and myself, the Sons of a Pitch, an American soccer podcast. We're still coming at you every week with fresh content, fresh takes on all things American soccer. Again, follow us at SOP Soccer on Twitter, on Facebook at Sons of a Pitch Soccer, and search for us on YouTube. Thanks again to Donovan Food Brokerage and Nice Premium Iceland Pure Spring Water, our two sponsors who've been with us for now 2 years, supporting what we do, supporting our talk. And John, don't worry, we're going to get into some Chicago Fire talk next week for you. I know you want to hear more about them. But especially thank you to the listeners for bending your ear to us for an hour or so and, getting a little bit of sports that we can give you. So thank you all so very much. Mike, anything you want to say before we sign off?
No, that's it. Thanks for your support. Keep it coming, and tell your friends and enemies about us. And we will see you guys next week.